You trust the police to keep you safe. But what happens when the police become the predators? New York, 1860. The city that never sleeps, stinking of smoke, sweat, and spilled ale, hums with life and vice. The beat cop struts down Mulberry Street, nightstick swinging. His boots glimmer under gaslight, the same boots that crush protesters and kick open saloon doors, not to arrest criminals, but to collect his nightly cut. This is not fiction. This was New York City's first police department, a force that began as a dream of order and quickly mutated into its own organized crime syndicate.
Before badges, there were batons. Before precincts, there were gangs. The New York City Police Department was born in 1845, not out of civic virtue, but necessity. Riots, fires, and political uprisings ripped through the city like daily weather. But unlike London's disciplined bobbies, New York's cops were political mercenaries. Appointments were traded like favors at a bar. A man didn't become a policeman because he was honest. He became a policeman because he had connections. The higher the rank, the deeper the pocket. And in a city swollen with immigrants, chaos was profitable. Policing in the 1800s was less about law and more about who could control the streets. And the ones who could were often criminals in uniform.
To understand corruption, follow the politics. Enter Tammany Hall, the democratic political machine that ran New York like a private empire. Its lieutenants controlled votes, licenses, and, most crucially, the police. Cops weren't just local enforcers, they were Tammany soldiers. They intimidated voters, broke strikes, and forgot to notice when gangsters supported the party with generous donations. Bribes were called assessments. Protection money became campaign contributions. A police captain's job was as much about fundraising as law enforcement. A good officer didn't solve crimes, he leveraged them. And if you wanted justice in 1870s Manhattan, you had two choices: buy it or bury it. The police gangs, coppers and crooks. Imagine gangs with badges. The copper clubs formed within precincts, unofficial brotherhoods that ran rackets from gambling to brothels. Patrolmen owned saloons, lent money to pimps, and sold information to burglars. Rival precincts even fought street brawls over territory. Arrests became currency. If a criminal refused to pay off his protection dues, his next stop was a cold cell and a quick beating. The difference between crime and law vanished. The uniform only decided which half of the paycheck you were on.
No place revealed the rot better than the 5 Points, Manhattan's infamous slum. A melting pot of misery and ambition. It was packed with saloons, bordellos, and lodging houses built on sin. Gangsters like the dead rabbits roamed free because they paid the right officers. Police raids were staged performances. Informants warned brothels minutes before an inspection. Barkeepers slipped envelopes into patrol coats. An arrest was often a warning: pay up or next time your place burns. Newspapers exposed the truth, but the city shrugged. Corruption was as natural as cobblestones. The Great Scandals. By the 1870s, corruption had grown too bold to hide. Journalists like Lincoln Steffens and reformers began documenting staggering abuses. Officers extorting businesses, kidnapping political opponents, running illegal liquor dens. Then came the Lexow Committee of 1894, a tidal wave of exposés. It revealed entire precincts operated like crime families, collecting rent from illegal enterprises. Witnesses spoke of bribe books, gambling lists, and coded ledgers. One testified that every policeman in New York has his price. When the hearings ended, the city staggered under its own shame. But the reforms that followed were more cosmetic than curative. For every crooked cop fired, another waited for the night shift. The dagger of reform. A young police commissioner named Theodore Roosevelt tried to carve decency out of the rot. Between 1895 and 1897, he marched through the city at night, catching sleeping officers, closing brothels tolerated for decades, and demanding integrity from men who laughed at the word. For 2 years, Roosevelt was both hero and nuisance. Bars closed earlier, bribes flowed slower, but the machine simply adapted. When he left for Washington, the streets reverted, proving one man's virtue wasn't enough to cure a culture where corruption had become tradition. Still, his crusade left an echo, the first whisper that police could serve the public and not merely themselves. From empire to embarrassment. As the 19th century ended, the NYPD's reputation swung between pride and scandal. Modernization brought telegraphs, revolvers, and uniforms, but the soul of the force remained fractured. Some officers sought glory, others sought graft. When automobiles replaced horses and skyscrapers replaced slums, New York's corruption didn't vanish, it simply changed form. The 1800s police gangs became the blueprint for later rackets, the blending of law and crime that would one day give rise to the very mafia Luciano perfected. The lesson was bitter and clear. Once power learns the language of corruption, it never truly forgets the tune.
History often romanticizes outlaws, but the most dangerous criminals once wore the city's blue. The 1800s police were not just guardians gone astray. They were the mirror of a city driven by greed, politics, and survival. We inherited their systems, their language, even their myths of heroes and villains. But maybe the true lesson of New York's corrupt cops isn't about betrayal, it's about vigilance, because power, left unguarded, always reaches back for its old habits. The line between justice and corruption was thin in 1860, and maybe, just maybe, it still is.